That might help.
Go get him, Jerry, bring up the hill.
I'm sorry, I came out on him. Didn't tell him I was coming. Couple of preliminary things let's go ahead and take up that we're waiting on the jury. And I forgot notes. Yes. Come on. Yeah, share with me.
Good morning.
One's here. Bring on. Let's go slide over. Yes, come on in. You're fine. Good morning. Yes. Jury here, and I'm waiting on my notes, my cheat sheets, but as I recall, we had one open issue we wanted to address.
I can address one other thing just briefly.
Please, I'm waiting on my notes.
Speaking about it. Because Ms. Landis here, our witness is very pregnant. And she would be first, but she's our other acts witness. That I would tell the jury in opening that she will be first for those reasons, that normally we're going basically out of order. And explain that to them and tell them not what you're going to say, but that you'll give them the limiting instruction. So I just wanted to know, before I call the first witness, do you want to read the limiting instruction, or do you want me to call her and throw on the stand and then you read it to them?
Hold on a second.
Yes.
You have a copy of the charges that I ain't bring any of them.
We do
I'll
have
get mine. That's no problem. I'll get mine.
Okay, not that you just have one.
Tell Trey I need that. No, my preference is that I will give it before.
I call her. Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
But yeah, it's a little bit awkward.
Yes.
So she's going to be your very first witness.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Mr. Carlin, you have no objection to that?
I don't. I would, if you could think of something to let the jury know outside of the charge itself that this is unusual, this is a other act, this is not related to the act we're charged right now, but we are doing this out of, if you could.
Because of her medical condition?
Yes, sir.
All right. You want me to fix it up?
Yes, sir.
I was going to try to address it somewhat in opening too.
Okay.
So
All
they
right. All right.
understand.
I think I can do it. All right. Have you looked at her limiting instructions? It's pattern, so I presume there's no problem.
No objection.
All right. I'm going to get mine. I don't have it, but I'll get it. And if it's the same stuff, it needs to be redacted for. Have you already redacted the facts of this case?
Yes.
Okay. Good. investigate, then we should be good to go. Anything else other than this?
For that particular issue.
No.
I don't know.
Okay.
We have other preliminary issues other than the one that you're intending to address during the question.
All right, well, let's do the others first. I'm listening. What are the other preliminary issues?
We would invoke the rule of sequestration. I'm not sure if the defense has any witnesses, but we would invoke that rule. But note that Investigator Morrison is sitting with us for the orderly presentation of evidence. I don't believe the defense has an objection to that.
We would also invoke the rule judge, and Mr. Hall is here to help assist us with the orderly presentation of evidence.
So it sounds like neither of you have any objection to that, to either of those persons being present.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right.
Actually, the state files a motion in limine regarding third-party guilt. Mr. Carter had possibly intended to address other boyfriends that the victim had who may have been abusive in the past with some of the witnesses. And so we filed that motion that basically says, without any further corroborating evidence, to be able to ask about those particular individuals being somehow connected to this murder, it's not appropriate. He agrees. He's not going to bring that up unless particular circumstances throughout the trial present themselves that would, allow that line of questioning.
That's correct, Your Honor. At this point, I do not have any specific evidence of a prior boyfriend who that would be relevant to the case right now. If something were to come up, I would certainly alert the state and the court, and we could talk about it before I attempted to get that information in. If the door were open for some reason. One of the ways I see it coming in is the fact that one of the young children of the victim in our forensic interview talks about another boyfriend who was violent with Miss Marshall. That child also appears to talk about some hearsay things that she was told about the relationship between Mr. Hill and Miss Marshall. If it becomes relevant that she's confused by another incident that happened, that's one of the particular reasons where I can see it coming in.
Hey, I just want to be clear that the law says that it can't just be she had an abusive boyfriend in the past and someone had hurt her before, that there must be some connection to the actual murder and incident that occurred here with that individual. So
I think it does, counsel, that they have some nexus now.
yes.
So before you get to that's part of your something in your case in chief, not in something that you would seek to introduce around their cross, correct?
It might come up with regard to that child when she testifies.
I mean, I don't believe that that'd be appropriate at all to question the child about this past instance of violence against her mother that she knows about. I don't see how there's any nexus between that incident and that individual to the actual murder.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's fine, Judge.
No, I think you need to listen to this. In the event that on your case, so today, tomorrow?
Yes, today, Your Honor.
Okay. This morning?
Maybe. She's witness number 9, so it's possible if it goes very fast.
Y'all real good. Okay. This morning. All right. The reason I asked was because I thought we could take it up at lunch and not spend any more time debating it, and we can talk about it in the context of what your direct proffer would be, and of course give him a chance to assert it. But it sounds like, Mr. Carter, to thread that needle, you have to do more. It has to be a nexus then.
Right. And the nexus would be for impeachment purposes, just for that issue, not that.
Well, let's see. Let's put a pin in it. What I asked you to do, is to make sure before you call her, let's revisit the issue. Okay? So that we don't have to stop in the middle of her testimony and do that.
Yes, sir.
What else? Other stuff.
I wanted to note for the record, we've agreed to all redactions necessary in the defendant's interview, tailored the transcript to reflect that.
You good, Mr. Carter?
I believe
That
that's
silence I take as being acquiescent.
That is correct.
Good.
And of course, we have stipulations that have already been entered into, and I wasn't sure how the court wanted to proceed in terms of reading those to the jury. We can read them at the times we
You
find
can read them
appropriate.
and you decide when it's appropriate in the flow of evidence. Given that we take it first witness where we are, you definitely want to put that in its proper place. So certainly I will, when you get ready to do it, we'll make the stipulations of the evidence and then to receive them as such as well. Okay? Was that also a part of what is this? Part of the pattern? I'm good.
There are obviously some gruesome photos and body camera footage that will be displayed during the course of the trial. I know that some of this trial is going to be live streaming on the internet, and of course there's witnesses, family members like that, you know, I believe maybe possibly even children in the courtroom. So when those situations come about that we're going to be presenting that evidence, we would ask the court to perhaps note that for all of the audience members, because, or we can, I mean, I want to, it's an unusual circumstance with it live streaming and people here, so.
Well, I'm going to let you know that, because you know when you're going to be introducing. I have no idea. I've seen none of those. So you'll need to know that, I guess, that this is what I'm about to present. And the persons in the audience will have to use their own judgment as long as the trial remains. All right? It's an open courtroom, and that's something to deal with the police. I'm not the police there. And as it relates to the live stream that's occurred, that's what they present. I'm not going to censor that name. As to how what they cut off and they don't show. Okay? I think it has to, and we'll use, I hope, appropriate discretion about how what they show and don't show, but I'm not going to censor them. As it relates to that. It's a part of the evidence that you're presenting in this case, correct? All right. What else?
I just wanted to, I'm going to go, I said I have no objection to the redactions on the statements. I'm preserving my objection to allowing the statements at all, not all the motions to the statements.
I understand that those objections are preserved, but the redactions that are in place, you have no issue with regard to that.
That's right. Just want to make sure I stated that correctly.
All right.
I wanted to clarify the reasons that the 404B excuse me, evidence was admitted, and that was motive to control family members with violence, intent to harm significant others, and knowledge of force required to strangle someone unconscious or to death. I believe we covered all of that in the hearing, but I just wanted to clarify that before since we are pulling up with this first, before we got to that.
And I think we have two open issues that I reserve ruling on, right?
In terms of, well,
those are the two matters I already spoke about relates to Casey Martin assertion. She's not the first in the petition.
Casey Martin, no, Your Honor. I estimate he'll testify tomorrow.
Okay. All right. And the other was, I'm reading my notes to refresh my own. I had two that I had reserved ruling on.
I think the other was the car issue, that she was driving to Florida and whether he sabotaged her car. I think that was the one issue. And then the other was Casey Martin, whether he could say that she said that's the guy who's going to kill me.
Correct.
Yes, I think it was a question about if she had told Lacey Benton that he made her take the photographs down in the bedroom.
The victim's husband.
But
yeah.
The state, I mean, upon further reflection, we don't believe we need, it's absolutely necessary, I guess, to use those particular statements in this trial. We just were focusing,
let them in.
We were focusing on Casey's statement. That one is the one that is most probative here. So in terms of that it's Florida she was going to, in light of the fact the court said we can show that she was afraid of him and wanted to get away from him, we're not going forward on this.
So the issue of Mr. Martin driving by the house, you're withdrawing your request?
No. The other one, we're withdrawing a request. Casey Martin's statement about driving past the house, we certainly believe should be admissible. I wrote an email outlining that Jacob's case and how it's similar in the same regard as the particular statement made to Casey as he's driving past the house.
Let's do this. That is not a witness of the 9 this morning, correct?
No.
All right, let's just hold it. We can debate. You can make your record at that time. Anything else that we need to address preliminarily this morning with regard to the witnesses that are just here to call this morning? Let me ask you that.
No, Your Honor.
Good. All right. Bring them in.
To the restaurant. One in the restaurant.
One in the restaurant.
Restaurant.
Come on. Let the restaurant.
There's no water. There's no water in the refrigerator.
Okay.
You may sit in the way in the box you like. Seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the prompt return today. I hope to reciprocate that as we go out throughout these proceedings today as well. If you would stand, and let me give you an oath, and then we'll get going. Raise your right hands for me. You should well and truly try the issue form in this bill of indictment, number 2018 CR 518-4, between the state of Georgia and James Gary Hill III, charging him with count 1, malice murder, count 2, felony murder, count 3, aggravated assault, and a true verdict give according to the evidence. So help you God. You may be seated. A couple of housekeeping things. Musical chairs are open, so you can sit where you want in that box. And we don't have any. We're not going to take a chair away, so there's going to always be enough chairs for all 14 of you. But if you would, you may sit wherever you wish in that box. No more assigned seats. These seats you've been given that pad and pen, as noted before you. I want you to put your name at the top of it, and you may use it as you choose. Your doodles, whatever you choose to do with it. I trust that you'll take good notes. That will be good for your reference later on as well. But it needs to remain in this building. It shall not leave the building. We go into tomorrow or any other days. You need to be sure it's left here. And so that those notes will remain and be available for your use only. We'll take periodic breaks throughout our day. If I am not breaking as frequently as you need me to, the buddies are great about helping me watch. But I don't like to, if I can, not break in the middle of someone testifying. So every hour, hour and a half or so is what we normally try to do as well from that point. I like giving what I call a preliminary charge to kind of frames what you're participating in. And as you know, this is a criminal case. Criminal trials, ladies and gentlemen, result when a person is accused of a crime, in this case by way of an indictment, returned by a grand jury and enters a plea of not guilty, thereby denying each and every essential allegation of the indictment. This forms what's called the issue for which you as a trial jury have been impaneled to try and to determine. Now, the fact that this defendant is on trial and has been indicted by a grand jury does not constitute any evidence, no inference of guilt. It is merely the manner in which specific charges have been brought before the court for trial on its merits. That is, whether or not this defendant is guilty of the charges made against him in this indictment. In all cases, the defendant or accused enters upon a trial presumed to be innocent. This presumption remains with him until and unless this presumption is overcome by evidence presented to you during this trial, sufficient to satisfy your minds as the jury trying this case of the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. This is what's called the burden of proof. The burden of proof rests upon the state to prove each essential element of the offenses charged in this indictment beyond a reasonable doubt. However, the state is not required to prove the guilt of the defendant on trial beyond all doubt. A reasonable doubt means just what it says. It's a doubt of a fair-minded, impartial juror honestly seeking the truth. It is not an arbitrary or capricious doubt. It is a doubt arising from the evidence, the lack of evidence, or a conflict in the evidence. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon reason. And if, after considering all the facts and circumstances in this case, if your minds as jurors are wavering, unsettled, and unsatisfied, then that is the doubt of the law, and you, the jury, should acquit the defendant. But if that doubt does not exist in your minds as to the guilt of the defendant, then you, the jury, may convict him. In our system, it is the duty and responsibility of the trial judge to ascertain the law applicable to this case and to instruct you, the jury, on the law. It then is your duty and responsibility as the jury to ascertain the truth of this case from a factual standpoint, from all the evidence that will be presented to you during this trial. Then it becomes your duty and responsibility to apply the law to the facts, and by this application of law to fact and of fact to law for you to arrive at a verdict in this case. Now, I point out that you must determine, ladies and gentlemen, the credibility of all witnesses who will appear and testify before you. Credibility simply means believability. And in passing upon the credibility or believability of a given witness, and in determining the way you, the jury, give a witness's testimony, you may consider all the facts and circumstances of the case, the witness's manner of testifying, their means and opportunity for knowing the facts about which they testify, the probability or improbability of their testimony, their interest or lack of interest in the case, and their personal credibility so far as it may legitimately appear to you from this trial. As to all witnesses, you, the jury, should apply the same standards, measures, and tests which you think would be appropriate and meaningful in determining the weight you give the testimony of every witness. It is the foundation of our criminal justice system that everyone accused of a crime is entitled to a trial by jurors who are totally impartial between the state and the accused, and who enter upon the trial of this case without having previously formed and expressed any opinion as to the guilt or innocence of the accused. That's what we did on yesterday in your selection process. Now, the attorneys for both sides will, at the beginning of this case, if they choose, outline or make opening statements to you. They will then question witnesses sworn in the case, and at the conclusion of the presentation of evidence, they will sum up their contentions and make what we call a closing arguments to you. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not bound by what any attorney or party acting as his own attorney says are the facts or the law during this trial. You should take the facts from witnesses who will sit here, be sworn in front of you, and any other evidence that may be presented and admitted during this case. You take the law from the court, as I will give you in the charge or may be pronounced throughout this trial. By applying one to the other, fact to law, law to fact, you are asked to make your judgment as you, the jury, find the truth of this case to be. All right, counsel, you may begin with your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
We met yesterday. My name is Candice Brance. I'm in the DA's office. Seated with me and my co-counsel is Ms. Amber Bennett, who's a senior assistant DA as well. And also seated with us is Investigator Brent Morrison with the Newton County Sheriff's Office. He's the lead investigator in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, today is July 16, 2019. It has been a year, 11 months, and 26 days since Kelly Marshall's family and friends have seen her and have heard her voice. Kelly grew up here. She was married. She had 2 children. She first had a daughter, Jayla. She has a son, Traylon. She went to school here. I expect her family and friends to tell you things about Kelly, that she liked butterflies and crowns, and she was very outgoing, funny. She could be loud, and she was a little thing. She was about 5'4", 120 pounds, but she was a tell it like it is kind of girl. She was 27 years old when she died. Kelly's body was found on August 12, 2017, underneath the overpass from the bridge at Mount Tabor Road, down by the Yellow River, at that bank, where people come in. It's a public access place where you can put your kayaks in. A married couple, the Kilpatricks, had come down that morning, about 10:30 in the morning, and we're going to go in. He had his kayak on top of the truck, and we're backing in, and they get out. And his wife, Tracy, sees a body over in the distance. She doesn't go over there. She was scared. Her husband goes closer, maybe up to about 15 feet or so away, starts to yell. They can't tell if this is a woman or a man. Starts to yell and kind of see if someone will respond. No one responds. He will learn that she was dead there at the scene. They will call a friend that they see that cross over in his truck over the bridge that they knew, because they knew he knew CPR and they weren't sure what was going on, and they will call the police. And you will see some of the body camera video of when the police first arrived. Kelly was left there in the dirt, face down. She was partially nude from the chest down. She had been bitten by insects. She'd been left overnight. And she died at the hands of the defendant, James Gary Hill. There was blunt force trauma. She was strangled to death. And to understand her death and what happened to her, you really have to understand her life. What was going on in her life? What was going on those months prior to her death, those weeks prior to her death. Now, Kelly was still married at the time that she died. She was married to Thomas Marshall. She and Thomas had been childhood friends, grew up together. They said I called them like high school sweethearts. They got married young, had both of their children together young. They had their ups and downs. They were separated at the time. Thomas would get in trouble. He would be locked up, get incarcerated. He was actually incarcerated at the time that she died. But that being said, they were very close. She talked to him all the time. She would visit him. They were trying to raise their children together. Their children lived with his mother, just down, not very far from where Kelly was residing. And it had been rocky, but he was supposed to be paroled out actually a week after she died. And he actually did parole out a week after she died. They were so close that she had basically arranged with his parole officer that he was going to parole out and come back and live with her. She resided with her grandmother, Miss Janet Harper, her dad, and at times her brother, Justin. That's where she was living at that time. But to kind of know what's going on with her is that that relationship would be on again and off again. It had been for years. The kind of pattern was is he might go away for a while, he'd come back, they might get back together for a period of time, and they were trying to really raise their kids. She was working while living at her grandmother's house. She was trying to get money together to get a place of her own. And during all this time, about 6 months prior, she met the defendant, James Hill. He also goes by Jay, Jim, J-Man. And so you may hear witnesses call him different names. Well, while she met him, that relationship, as new relationships are, they're exciting, they're great. She's crazy about him. But as the months go by, the evidence will show that that relationship got tumultuous, that his temper began to show, that there were periods of incidences of domestic violence in this relationship. And you're going to hear from different witnesses about that. You will hear from her grandmother, Miss Harper, that she was living with, that at some point she finally said, Jay can't be over here anymore. He cannot come to this house. I don't want him here anymore. And she had confronted him that he was not allowed there. You will hear how her grandmother took her to the hospital at Newton Piedmont approximately 2 weeks earlier before she had died, and she took her on July 25th, 2017. And she took her because she was having an incredible amount of anxiety. There had been another physical attack several days prior. She still had bruises on her face, on her neck. She goes to the emergency room because she's referred over there by Viewpoint Mental Health to see about getting maybe some kind of medication to help her through this before she could get a doctor's appointment with them. So that's not really that uncommon. And she goes in and she's having trouble sleeping, depression, anxiety. You will hear from that doctor, Dr. Romanji, that saw her at the emergency room. That documented the marks and the bruising on her body. That documented her concern, her saying that she was suffering this at the hands of her boyfriend and that she was really stressed out. She will actually give her some medication for the pain while she's there. She'll hurt like her chest, if anything still hurts. She gets medication for anxiety. But you're going to hear from other witnesses too. You're going to hear from Kelly's mother, Gayla, and her sister, Lindsay. They weren't living here in Newton County. They were up towards like the Greensboro area or so. And they didn't know Mr. Hill very well. At one point, Kelly and the defendant go to visit and go see them for the afternoon. This may have been maybe the second time that they never really met him. They go up there, and Mr. Hill and Kelly get into first a verbal altercation. They hear the yelling. There's a loud argument. They will kind of rush to see what's going on. Kelly's on the floor. At some point, it's very volatile. It's physical, to the point that her mother has to basically starts to step in between them to kind of break this apart. And as Mr. Hill's trying to reach around still to strike Kelly again, he actually strikes her mother. You will hear from Kelly's daughter, Jayla. Jayla was 12 at the time her mother died. Jayla will tell you that she had witnessed the defendant grab her mother by her hair, pull her around. She had witnessed him hold her by her throat up on a wall. She will tell you that they would argue about her father, Thomas. And that's going to be a recurring issue, this is her relationship with Thomas. They would argue so much so that he would say, well, if I can't have you, nobody's going to have you. And I know where you live, and I know where your kids live. You will hear from another friend of hers, Casey Martin. Casey's been a friend of hers, Casey's a gentleman, had been a friend of hers for about 10 years. She will call him at one point during a physical altercation with the defendant. Casey will get her, take her back to his mother's house and actually take photographs of her injuries, of her bloody nose, and what happened that day. And he really, Casey at that time was out on parole himself, wasn't thinking so much about his parole and was trying to convince her to call the defendant over to see him. He was going to handle some of that himself. He was very angry about it, and she did not want to do that. She did not want to cause any more problems. She did not do that. They never had any kind of altercation. But his opinion about that and kind of what's going on will be important later. You will hear from her friend Lacey Benton, she was good friends with, that Lacey had heard the defendant on more than one occasion threaten to kill Kelly. That Lacey had never actually seen him strike her, but she would get called over after the fact. And that Lacey would confront him and say, "You need to keep your hands off my friend." And his response to that was basically, if she stopped running her mouth and stopped saying the things that she says, this would be an issue. At the time, the day before her body's found, it's August 11th, Kelly decides to go with a defendant and his friend, Michael Swearingen. He goes by the name Swag. They go to Jack's Creek here in Newton County. They're going to go, it's August, it's hot, they're going to go down by the water. They spend the day down there in the afternoon. They're drinking, and they will come back closer to around dinner time. The defendant is driving. He takes Michael home first, and he's going to take Kelly home around dinner time. And at some point that afternoon or during that car ride, she's calling friend Lacey Benton to get her on the phone. The defendant actually takes the phone from Kelly because he wants to talk to Lacey's boyfriend. They put him on speakerphone, and basically they're trying to make plans. The plans are going to be that, hey, let's get together tonight, and to be, you and Jay, and to be my boyfriend, and the defendant's making plans. They're going to get a hotel room. They'll all go hang out because he can't go to Kelly's house because he's not allowed over there. His grandma won't let him over there. Kelly's going to get home around dinner time. Her grandmother's home, dad's home. And she made hamburgers that night. Kelly will get a plate of food, eat, go back to her room, come back out later, get a second plate, which they thought was a little odd. She doesn't really eat that much. She takes it back and eats. They really don't see her again after that. At some point, around 8:44 p.m., there's a text from the defendant saying, "Hey, I'm outside your window. You can't come in the house. Are you going to come out here? Are you going to open this window?" She's still talking to Lacey, trying to get her to come out, come over, bring beer. What's eventually going to happen is Lacey never comes. Lacey and her boyfriend end up staying at her mother's house. They don't come out that night. She's trying to get Casey. We're talking about Casey Martin. Why don't you come out too? He's not going out because he knows he's going to get an altercation with the defendant. He's not going, so he doesn't come. And before they go to bed, both the grandmother and the father hear a loud bumping noise. I think they would describe it as maybe it almost sounded like furniture moving, but it was a loud bumping in her bedroom. But no one goes and checks on her. The next morning, about 10 o'clock, her father is up, and he wants to get a cigarette, and he's going to go to her room to go get one. He goes to her room. The door is locked. That seems a little unusual. He kind of jimmies the door to get in once the door locked. When he gets inside, she's not there. She's not there. Her phone is there. Her purse is there. Her things are there. But Kelly's not there. And around that same time, around 10:30, it's when the Kilpatricks are coming down with their kayaks and find her. They're able to identify her at the scene, and Investigator Morrison begins to investigate this case. Law enforcement thinks it looks like a homicide. We're not going to really know that for a couple of days until the GBI does an autopsy and figures out the cause of death. They're going to rule this cause of death as asphyxia, basically, that her breathing was prevented. strangulation. You're going to see some photographs. You're going to see the marks on her neck, the bruising on her neck. The medical examiner is going to testify. She's going to let you know that there was blunt force trauma to her mouth. There was blunt force trauma to her head, 4 different places. She has a very large bruise on her back. Her liver is lacerated. She's basically left there for dead. Now, as Investigator Morrison continues to investigate, everyone he's talking to, as you just heard the history, is kind of pointing to the concerns they have about the defendant, and he's pointing to talk to them. Well, by the following day on Sunday, the defendant is spotted in Walton County in that car that he normally drives. They've been looking for him. He's basically a person of interest, and they began to try to pull him over. There is a high-speed chase. You will see this in the video of that. He eventually wrecks his car. And Investigator Morrison will eventually interview him by that Tuesday over in Walton County, and you will hear that interview. During that interview with Mr. Hill gives some information about what happened. First of all, he says, hey, I dropped Kelly off. I last texted her. And you'll see the text message. Good night, going to bed. Didn't see her since then. And he did all that because he wanted to go downtown, to go to Atlanta, to go to the Cheetah, the club. Remember me asking you about that. He's going to get down there. And Investigator Morrison is going to talk to him a lot about verifying, that he goes down there, and he does. So you will see that he does go down there. He gets there about 12:53 a.m., close to 1 o'clock in the morning. And we see him again leave around 2:26 in the morning. He's asked, so, what do you do for the rest of the weekend? Where'd you go? Well, I drove around for a while. I'm not that familiar with Atlanta. I eventually found the hotel room, Sheridan, in Atlanta. And you will see that he drives in approximately 5:30 a.m. His key card is swiped about 6:11 a.m. He says, I stayed down there all weekend. What Investigator Morrison doesn't tell him at the time is that he knows that that isn't necessarily true. He wasn't down there all the time. Because in fact, what you're going to see and what you're going to hear is there is a 911 call that comes in at 3:16 a.m. in between leaving the Cheetah or going to Sheridan here in Newton County that spots a Cutlass like the defendant drives. That's somewhere between McMahon Road, I'll make sure I have this right, and Alcovey Road. And Deputy Gordon is going to respond to that area as it's run off the road. Caller, I'm just concerned there's a car that's run off the road. But when he gets over there, the car's no longer running off the road. You can actually see if the car's driving. And it seems to be, there don't seem to be any traffic violations, seems to be fine. He doesn't pull him over for that reason, but what he does do is that he runs his tag. And when he runs it, you're going to hear the radio dispatch. It comes back to one James Perry Hill III. He's here in Newton County. He does go back and check into the Sheridan, but during that period of time, it's back here. Investigator Morrison will ask him, hey, what about the phone that you use? Give me your phone number. Where's your phone? Oh, yeah, I had a lot of problems with that phone. I got rid of my phone. I bought a new phone. And when they go through his car, you'll see there's the box of the new phone that he purchased, but I don't remember what I did with that old phone. I have no idea. So we don't have that. Investigator Morrison tries to get phone records from that phone, but it's a track phone, so he can't get the phone records from it. He will tell Investigator Morrison how much he loved Kelly, how much he loved her to death, while simultaneously saying, but by the way, she also talks to a whole lot of people. That this is really hard on him. Things have been really difficult. And the only reason that he ran from the police is because he had relapsed. And that's the only reason that he ran. Finally, what I'll tell you is that you're going to hear some witnesses out of order. We do it a little differently today. We have a witness that you're going to hear first from today because she's pregnant and about to have this baby. And normally she would go last. But she is not actually a part of this case in chief, this particular case. She actually never knew Kelly Marshall. but she did know the defendant. The judge is going to give you a limiting instruction before she testifies, but I'm going to tell you what I expect the testimony to be. Her name is Amber Land at the time of Stenchcom, and she knew the defendant because they grew up together, they were kids together, social circle. Remember I asked about Winsall neighborhood, that area. They had known each other and started dating when she was about 14 or 15. He's a little bit older, a year and a half older. They dated for about 6 months, the same. And during that time, she will explain the nature of that relationship, how controlling it was in that relationship. They stopped seeing each other, had no contact for about a year. He's out of the picture for about a year. When he comes back into the picture, he calls her out of the blue. Tells her that if I can't have you, nobody can. And very shortly thereafter, she sees him at a party. She's young at this point, she's about 15, 16. They're at a party out there towards that Winsong area is where she lives. Gone to a friend's house in like a barn. They're out there, they're drinking, they're playing quarters, they're being teenagers. He's there. They don't really have any confrontation there. They don't really say anything. There's not really an issue. There's not really an argument. A lot of friends around. She decides at about 2 a.m. to go home, and she's going to walk back home because there's a cut through. She'll explain it. There's a cut through where you can just kind of cut across through the neighborhood and get to her house. And as she's cutting through, before she knows it, the defendant is behind her. And he has spun her around and is choking her from behind. He will choke her to the point that, strangle her to the point she passes out. She wakes up on the ground with her pants and her underwear down, his hand between her legs, and talking out of his head. And she convinces him, my throat just won't hurt. Just my house is pregnant. Just let me go to my house and make us something to drink. I'll leave my purse, I'll leave my phone, everything right here. You know me, I'll be right back. And she takes off. And she runs until she runs in that house, trying to get in. The door's locked, she doesn't normally have a key, but she does, and she's trying to get in as fast as she can. And she gets her mother wakes up her brother. And they come out on the front porch to Mr. Hill, being out there by some of the bushes in that area. You will hear from her mother as well about that incident. And that she confronted the defendant. You will hear that she said, what you did was wrong. What you did. He said, yeah, I know. But I'd probably do it again. The last thing that I'm going to tell you before I leave is that you all have notepads. And I'm going to suggest that you do take notes during the trial. It behooves you to do that. And that's because it's not like TV. So our court reporter is great. She can't just read something back to you. The nice thing is that you can take down notes that you think are important, each issue that you think is important. And then when you get back there to deliberate, one person may have something on their notes that another person doesn't have, but you can use your collective experience and your collective memories in your notes to kind of help you decide on something. You will have physical evidence in this case, and by that I mean things like photographs, we have videos and different things like that. And then there's obviously testimony in every case. They're weighted the same. So take notes as you need to. He is charged currently with malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault against Kelly Marshall. And we're going to ask when we come back in closing, and that's where we put together all the facts that you're going to hear and the actual law the judge is going to give you. And when we prove this case to you, we're going to ask you that you find him guilty on each and every count. Thank you.
Mr. Carter.
Good morning. The defense in this case is that James Hill had nothing to do with the death of Kelly Marshall. On August 11, 2017, James and Kelly had a nice day at Jack's Creek, playing around, having fun. James took Kelly home that evening. He left her house that evening, and when he left, Kelly Marshall was alive and well. The state said in their opening that to understand Kelly's death, you have to understand her life. And that may be true to some extent, but you are going to hear a lot of evidence during this trial about certain hand-picked events that happened during during the relationship between James Hill and Kelly Marshall. You're going to hear about things that happened 10 years ago. What you're not going to hear about is what happened after James Hill left Kelly Marshall's house that night, because nobody knows. The state doesn't know, I don't know. And at the end of the trial, you won't know. I don't know how many of you are familiar with football, but in football, sometimes there are trick plays in which maybe there's a reverse, where the quarterback will pretend like he's handing off to one person and hand it off to another person. And as a defender, what you're supposed to do, two things. You're supposed to stand your ground, you're supposed to protect your side of the field, and you're supposed to do your duty. And you're also supposed to keep your eyes on the ball. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do during this trial, is to do your duty. Don't be swayed by things, hand-picked events that are Monday morning quarterback events. And don't be swayed by things that don't relate to this case. Because what's important in this case is what happened to Kelly Marshall on the night of August 11th, 2017. Now, I want to thank you for being here. The judge, state, Mr. Hill, we all appreciate you being here. I know this is probably not something that you thought you'd want to be doing this week, and we appreciate your time and we appreciate your attention. Now, the judge has explained to you already that James Hill comes into this case presumed innocent, and that he's going to stay presumed innocent until the state proves his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And the way they do that is through evidence. The evidence in this case will show that James Hill and Kelly Marshall did have a tumultuous relationship. There were verbal conflicts, there were physical altercations, and it's unfortunate. It was not a healthy relationship. I think both sides of their family realized it was not a healthy relationship. But on August 11th, 2017, they did spend the day together at Jack's Creek. No indication whatsoever that there was an argument, no indication that they were having any kind of issues on that day. James Hill took Kelly home, and when he left the house, Kelly was fine. Kelly was safe, and she was well when he left her house. He decided, since they did not get together with Lacey and her boyfriend, that he was going to go into Atlanta and he was going to have some fun. He had a little bit of money, and he decided he was going to go have some fun. So he went to the Cheetah Strip Club. Unfortunately, at the Cheetah, he met up with someone who had drugs, which was a former vice of Mr. Hill's, and he ended up relapsing that whole weekend. He spent some time at the Cheetah. He stayed at the Sheraton that day. When he got back to Walton County on Sunday, he was in really bad shape. He had been using drugs all week. Police saw his car, they decided to pull him over, and he decided to run because he had drugs in his car. He didn't want to be found with drugs in his car. When he gets to the jail, he finds out that Kelly's dead, believes that she's had an overdose, and again, he's in really, really bad shape. He speaks to the police and he tells them about his weekend as best he can under the circumstances. But he finds himself the chief, main, and only suspect in the death of Kelly Marshall. Police take what they perceive as inconsistencies in his story, and they charge him with this offense. And that's the timeline of James Hill. The timeline of Kelly Marshall, all we know is that James Hill dropped her off at her parents' house. We know that the next morning she was found at Mount Tabor Bridge on the Yellow River, deceased. So we know how her timeline ends, but we do not know what happened on the evening of August 11th, the morning of August 12th. What happened that caused her to be in the position at Jack's Creek? The state is going to try to tell you, well, look at this, look what happened a week before, look what happened 2 years before. What they don't know, and what none of us will know at the end of this trial, is what happened to Kelly Marshall on that night, who committed this crime. At the end of the trial, you're going to be left wanting more. So I'm going to ask you to listen carefully to all the evidence presented in this case. I'm going to ask you to hold the state to its burden of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And I ask that you keep your eyes on the ball. keep your eyes on the main issue in this case, what happened on the night of August 11th, morning of August 12th. And I ask that you come back with verdicts of not guilty on all these charges. Thank you.
Counsel, right. All right, Ms. Newman, as referenced earlier, you're going to hear first from a witness who's very pregnant. So it's a little bit out of order. You normally would not heard from this person until later on in this case. I need to give you, however, what we call the limiting instructions, and you're going to get actually your first charge or law in the case first thing. So when you hear this and receive this information and law in the context of what you're about to hear about way of testimony. Sometimes evidence is admitted for a limited purpose. Such evidence may be considered by you, the jury, for the sole issue or purpose for which the evidence is limited and not for any other purposes. In order to prove this case, these charges, the state must show knowledge or intent, must negate or disprove mistake, and must show motive. To do so, the state is and is about to offer evidence of other acts allegedly committed by the accused. You are permitted to consider this evidence only insofar as it may relate to those issues and not for any other purpose. You may not infer from such evidence that the defendant is of a character that would commit such crimes. The evidence may be considered only to the extent that it may show the elements and issues that the state is required or authorized to prove in the crimes charged in the case now on trial. Such evidence, if any, may not be considered by you for any other purpose. The defendant is on trial for the offenses charged in this bill of indictment only and not for any other acts, even though such acts may incidentally be criminal. Before you may consider any other alleged act for limited purposes stated, you must first determine whether it is more likely than not that the accused committed the other alleged acts. If so, you must then determine whether the act sheds any light on the elements of the offense, the issue for which the act was admitted, the crime charged in the indictment on trial. Now remember to keep in mind the limited use and the prohibited use of this evidence about other acts of the defendant. By giving this instruction, the court in no way suggests to you that the defendant has or has not committed any other acts, nor whether such acts, if committed, prove anything. This is solely a matter for your determination. All right, let me call you first witness.
This shows the state calls Amber Lant. Scoot your chair over what you can. Thank you. And will you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the matter before this court to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. And will you please state your name?
Amber Land.
And what was your maiden name?
Stinchcomb.
Can you spell Stinchcomb for the court?
STINCHCOMB.
Thank you. And do you know the defendant, James Gary Hill?
I do.
All right. How did you know him?
We kind of grew together.
And where was that?
So sorry.
And was there a point in time that you started dating Mr. Hill?
Yes.
About how old were you then?
13. 14. 13.
13 or 14? And during that time, well, let me ask you this, about how long did you date during that time?
Close to a year. 6 months to 2 years.
Was there, during that time, what was your relationship like with him on first date?
At first it was good, and then it was controlling.
And what do you mean by controlling?
Very controlling. Who I can talk to, what I can wear, my hair, my clothes.
And how would he control that?
He wouldn't allow me to wear those things or makeup or anything of that nature.
Did you have to wear your hair a certain way?
Yeah, only most of the time.
Were there certain clothes you could not wear?
Shorts, showed my cleavage.
Was there a time during that period when you were first doing that 6 months or so that he was ever physical with you?
He pushed me once.
At some point, did y'all break up or did you not see?
Did we break?
There was a point in time that you no longer
Yeah,
saw
we
her.
broke up.
Okay. And about how long, what period of time was it between you not seeing him anymore and him making contact with you again?
About a year.
A year. So when he makes contact with you again, how does he make contact?
He called me.
And what did he say when he called you?
He called me, asked how I was, and I remember him saying if he couldn't have me, no one could have me.
Is there a point shortly after that that you see him?
Yes.
And about how long after that phone call was that?
A couple days, maybe about a weekend.
About that weekend? All right. And on that weekend, are you still living in social circle?
Yes.
What neighborhood are you living in?
Cleansel.
And where was he living at that time? Would you know?
I'm not sure where he was living.
Okay. Did you grow up living kind of close together when you were little?
Yes.
So when you see him that weekend, where do you see him?
I was at Milton's house.
Okay. Is that a friend of yours?
It was a mutual friend, yes.
Okay. And was that in the Winsong area as well?
Yes.
And about what time were you there?
We were at Milton's that afternoon, and we ended up going to Franny's house.
And what all were y'all doing that evening?
We were hanging out at Milton's house, and then we ended up going to Franny's, and we were drinking and all kind of just hanging out in the bar.
Is during that time, were there any problems between you and the defendant when you were hanging out there?
No,
So you didn't have any kind of verbal altercations or any issues?
no.
Were you really talking to him a lot at that?
We communicated. We had conversations.
So everything seemed fine?
Everything's in fine.
Is there a point in time that you end up leaving?
We all ended up walking back to Milton's.
And about how long did you stay then when you went back to Milton's?
We went back to Milton's. We were all hanging out there 30 minutes or so. And then I told Milton I was going to walk home.
About what time was that you went home?
2 o'clock in the morning, maybe.
And how do you get home? How did you normally go home?
There was a trail. I lived on one street, Milton lived on the other street, and we had a little path through the woods right there.
You're like a cut through?
Yeah.
So when you left, did you take anybody with you?
No.
So you were walking home?
Yes.
At some point while you're walking home, do you encounter the defendant?
Yes.
And what happens?
I was walking through the trail, and he came up behind me and accused me of going back to friends to hang out with them rather than him. And then he did some sort of twist move, and his arm ended up around my neck.
Was he behind you at that point or in front of you?
Behind me.
So when his arm is around your neck, what's happening then?
He's squeezing me to where he can breathe, and
Are you doing anything?
I remember tapping on his arm.
What happens next?
on the ground, and he was sitting behind me with his arm. One arm was here, and his other hand was in my leg area.
What about your clothes?
My pants and my panties were not on. Down on the ground.
What do you do when you're picked up?
I kind of sit there and kind of collect. And I sit there for a second and realize, you know, he's still behind me. And then I tell him that my throat hurts and I needed something to drink. And I could see my house from where we were, somewhat right here. So I just tell him that I needed something to drink and that I would be right back.
Did you get to your house?
Yeah, I stood up and pulled my clothes on, and we kind of sat there for a second, and I walked back around my arm, and I told him, you know, hey, I'll be right back, you know, no big deal. I never said anything before, we would argue and everything, so I guess he trusted me to come back, and then I took off running, and I made it to my house.
Did you leave any things there with that?
My shoes were there still, my phone.
And when you get to your house, is your house unlocked or locked?
Is locked, and surprisingly, my housekeeping never did. And I was able to get in and wake my mom up.
So who all was home at your house at that time?
Everyone that lived there, my mom, my brother, my brother's girlfriend.
So when you get in the house, what happens next?
I tell my mom that Jim attacked me, and she gets my brother. They ended up going outside.
Outside your house on the porch?
Right.
In the yard?
Yes, and they were standing there, and he was still like right there where everything happened.
Okay, so when you say right there where everything happened, is there a part of your yard, or where was that? How
It was
close that
across
to
the
your house?
street. It
Okay.
was behind the house across the street is where the cut through was.
So, but you can still see that from your house, you can see where you're going.
Well, you can see the house, and I mean, you can somewhat see the cut through, and he was like to the side of the house.
All right. Does he say anything to you at that time, or did he say anything to you?
Not to me.
You
I
never
was
say
still,
anything at all?
I was still in the house, and my mom and my brother were out there, and my mom had asked him why he did it, and somewhat of the bitches. That's what he told my mom. So
I'm gonna check what you're saying.
Did you hear that?
did I hear him say that?
I'll move.
Objection is sustained.
Does anything else happen with Mr. Hill at that point, once everyone's on the porch?
Him and my brother get into a fight. My brother walks across the street, and they ended up somewhat tussling right there, and then they end up on my front porch fighting. They ended up fighting, and my brother seen some type of object, and we didn't realize it was a knife until he dropped it. And then they ended up fighting a little bit more, and then James ends up back in the yard.
Do you notify law enforcement?
Yes, I called them.
Does the defendant stay there?
No, he takes off running.
Did you go to the hospital?
Briefly take a matter.
You may. Council approach, second.
Speaking of my no, they're not. No.
You may continue.
All right, Ms. Land, did you go to the hospital at all?
I'm sorry,
She said I did. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
May, free reign of the court.
Thank you. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 1 and 2. You can just look at both of these. Tell me, do you recognize these? You do. And what are they?
My neck and my chin. These are busted blood vessels from where he squeezed on it.
These are the photographs of you
Yes.
after the incident. Have you figured out your depictions of the injuries? Do you see any changes, alterations, revisions? You're all right, that's the... Just a moment, I'll get this one, you can see it. Show you what's been marked as States 1. Can you describe what this is here?
My neck and the bruising under my chin.
All right, and those 3 marks there that are by your neck?
They're busted blood vessels.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as States 2. It's a little bit different of you. And those same 3 marks,
Are the busted blood vessels.
and were these taken the same night?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, Your Honor, I'd also seek to tender in State's Exhibit 3, which is a certified copy of conviction regarding this case with Ms. Land from the Walton County Superior Court.
Objection, no objection to the
Subject.
Thank you. I have no further questions for you, Mr.
Go with it.
Good morning, Ms. Mann. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You are about to have a baby?
Very, very close.
Already having contractions?
Yes. All morning.
Congratulations. I just have a couple more minutes.
You have 2 more questions.
I just have a couple more. So you knew Gary Hill growing up. Y'all were neighbors, and you knew him growing up, went to school together?
Yes.
Okay. And he was maybe a couple years older than you? A year or 2, something like that. And you knew, were you familiar with the fact that his mother was, went missing and then was, ended up, she was found dead?
Yes.
Okay.
I knew that.
And that was kind of a couple of years before you started dating, is that fair?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure.
And when you started dating, when you were about 13, 14, he was 15, 16, something like that range. The first time, during that time that you dated, he said he got controlling, and he liked to control the way you dressed and things, and at one time he pushed you, is that fair?
Yes.
Then later on, after not speaking to him for a while, he called you, and then a couple of days later you saw him at a party.
Mm.
And you were hanging out with Milton, and was it Franny? Is that
We went to Franny's.
Franny and Milton?
His name's Francisco.
These are all people that you grew up with, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And Milton's house was in Winsong, and your house was in Winsong. And there's a little path between houses that was about a 20-foot path, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you met up with him that night after when you were trying to walk home.
Yes.
And so he approached you, recall that he twisted you around, and when you woke up, you were in the position you described earlier.
Yes.
And told him your throat hurt, you were thirsty, and you asked him if you could go back and get a drink.
Yes.
And he was going to wait there for you, and he thought you were going to come back.
Yes.
But you were more upset than you let on, and so when you got back to your house, you didn't go back to talk with him, is that right?
Correct. I did not do that.
And Mr. Hill actually pled guilty to charges related to this offense, did he not?
He did.
And you haven't spoken to him since that time?
No.
All right.
You redirect of her?
No, Your Honor.
You are excused. Sure. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Call me next week.
State Boss Tracy Kilpatrick.
Come on, Ms. Kilpatrick.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the matter before this court to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. You may lower your hand, and will you state your name for the record and spell it for the court reporter?
Judge, I promise to be.
Counsel, ladies and gentlemen, let's take that morning break. The closest may take a little longer than I was thinking. One additional witness. Please don't talk about the matter. Take 15. All right, 15 minutes a second. What? Hold on.
I apologize, Judge. We're not going to make a habit out of that.
No, we're not going to make that. Recess. Thank you. All right.